All right, so I got a request for some coaching from Deathtail. I'm not sure if you guys remember Deathtail, but name that's been around for a long time. At least I've known of him for probably 7 or 8 years. So nice to see him. Send in a VOD request. This is gonna be a nice little short VOD, so we'll be able to quick and short to the point. The scaling here is a little bit, the dimensions are a little goofy, but it is what it is. So we'll talk about this. I'm not sure what server this is on. Maybe Arkenstone, I'm not sure. We'll give this a shot. So first thing to notice here in terms of buffs, the raw damage buff, that's always a good one to have. It's very, very cheap. It's very easy to stack. I think for like 15 bucks or something like that, you can get a stack that'll last you for like almost like a month of playtime, of like in-game playtime. So there's no point. It's not exactly 5%, but it's like 1%, 1.5%, so it's worth getting. I see these two right here. I hope that one of these is the armor buff, because obviously that's the most important one to have. The other two are a little bit more optional, and you can decide depending on who you're fighting. Obviously all three are useful, but it's not necessarily great. For example, if I knew I was fighting an RK, if I wanted to save myself some commendations, I could just pop the resist one pre-fight. And the way things are going with finesse right now too, I'm not sure how much value the evade and resist pots will be useful, especially after the next update. On Bull Roar, the stats haven't been scaled up yet, and resist and evade were like gutter tier. Like you're not going to be evading or resisting anything with anybody over like 10% finesse. So these pots might once again kind of fall into useless, but right now they're still somewhat useful. Only other thing that I'm a little concerned about is like you're using 2 of these and no incoming damage food. Maybe this just like expired, and obviously you have to do it like stop and get it. But if you're gonna blow commendations on something, the 3 most important things to get are Fury Pots, armor buff, and then the last 2, there's really 4 things, but that's the morale pots, the non 14%, like I'd go 25%. That's pretty important. You don't want these, but then it's really the incoming damage food. By far the most important. These root pots, I assume that's from a loot box, but you can buy those with commendations. You could do the same thing with the stun pot that doesn't do self damage. Those can be useful, especially the non-damage stun pot one. But the evade and resist pot's just not nearly as important. Okay, let's see how we open here. I'm gonna go ahead and actually start this off with playback speed at about 0.75. Actually, I'll do 0.5 and turn the music down just so I can actually see what's going on here. So we got a pounce and puddle. Don't get it in the puddle, that's fine. Okay, we want to see eye gouge claws here. Here comes the eye gouge, claws, howl, maul. Okay, so I mean that's the opener that I use. I kind of want to will take a little bit of credit for that, because I know I'm one of the first to at least make this rotation pretty popular, is chaining those 2 ultimates or 2 immediates together. This means that you should be able to immediately follow up with another claws, which we will see. And then from here you can do your next critical chain, which will probably be either piercing claws or rend, one of these 2. I would probably prioritize piercing claws most of the time, unless your target's really, really, really squishy, in which case rend first, or even scratch and snip into eye gouge claws is better. But for here, it's a relatively decent morale target, so piercing claws looks like, which would be the correct play. And then piercing claws, eye gouge. Having some issues with movement already on a target that's not actually moving all that much. Now, I'm not necessarily one to pick like a lot of fights in regards to movement, but this is pretty rough. This makes my movement look like ballet. So this is pretty bad because you miss your eye gouge cut, and then your claws is late as well. But we're gonna go into rend. Should go back to claws. It does. Now from here, this is where things get really, really interesting. Oh, you use sprint. Where was sprint? When was, oh, you use sprint to catch. Okay, so you've used piercing claws, eye gouge, rend. So everything that you need to get on the target is now up. Sprint duration is probably, I mean, you probably have at least another 8 to 10 seconds of sprint duration, so you don't need to slow just yet. There's no point wasting a slow this early in a rotation. So what we'd like to see at this point is you've got options. You could either just continue to raw damage, or you can throw in a throat rip every now and then. So I like to throw in throat rips every now and then if I don't have an immediately brilliant damage skill up. They definitely are kind of annoying, and it can throw them for a loop. A nice little thing you can do with throat rip as well is you can chain throat rip into a CC so that they clear the silence and they're ready to go, and then they get CC'd afterwards. But let's just assume that we're going to go for straight damage. From here, it should be maul, eye gouge, claws. It seems like you're leaving eye gouge and cooldown sometimes unnecessarily. Like right now, you really need to be going maul, cut it with eye gouge, and then instantly into claws. I know claws technically isn't completely off of cooldown yet, but that's normal. You will do maul, you'll double tap eye gouge. That takes like 0.3 seconds, 0.25 seconds to do if you do it quickly, at which point claws will basically be off of cooldown, and it'll allow you to do next claws quickly. Because if you see right now, claws is actually doesn't quite go off as quickly as it could, but also you could be getting an eye gouge damage in between this as well. So you really should be chaining. Like, I don't want to see eye gouge in cooldown. I don't want to see claws in cooldown. You've been min-maxing your claws well, but your eye gouge has been on cooldown twice when it should have been used. One looked like it was because of your bad movement, but yeah. Okay, into a rend. At this point, it technically should be swipe, not rend. You already have the rend debuff. Swipe does significantly more damage than rend, so it should be into a swipe. Brutal CC. Like I said, I'm playing it at a slower speed. So right now, let's actually talk about something really quick. So I believe the internal timer, the timer for self-motivation is around 14 seconds, I think, or 12, somewhere around there. 12, 13, 14, or 15. I think it's depends on what points they have. But it's important to know that because it's actually really significant that you CC right as self-motivation comes off of cooldown. So right now, bang, there's self-motivation. We're 8 seconds to the video. Now keep in mind, I'm playing this at a slower speed. So there's a CC, 8, 14, 15, 16, 17. It's actually not necessary for you to CC just yet. So if I were you, you can actually kill this guy before he self-motivates again. And here's how you're going to do it. You're going to do your claws, eye gouge, maul, claws. And that's going to take you about 2 to 3 seconds. Okay, so we're about 2 seconds away from self-motivation being off cooldown, and he'll probably be around 180k HP. Then you're gonna tin and shred, and then maybe you should be able to kill him in the stun. So let's see what happens. Claws, eye gouge, gets canceled with CC, unfortunate. I'm not sure where your stun pot is, but you need to be using it at this point in time. Maybe you're sitting on it for fear of Armor of Storm, but I think at this low of an HP, if you get your stun right, like there's nothing that you really need to worry about. So you are gonna tin and shred it. And because of that CC, it's probably a good idea because you are reaching a point to where self-motivation is going to be up in about 2 seconds. So better to play it safe, hit that tin and shred now. I would like you to see you cut it with eye gouge. But it doesn't. I can understand also wanting to save eye gouge so you can chain 1, 2, 3 quickly with positional. Eye gouge, maul, and then back to claws. Yeah, so that was good. The only thing I would say is definitely there are a couple times where eye gouge was off of cooldown for too long, and the over prioritization of rend over swipe, and then some movement issues as well. But like I said, with the class that's as complex micro as Warg is, having only a few things going wrong is actually a good thing, because usually there's a lot of things that can go wrong. What are we looking at here? Again, it seems like you're purposely not using the incoming damage food and using this other delving buff. I just think that's a mistake. Like, the incoming damage food is more like 6%, I think, or something like that. I'll have to run the numbers because it stacks with the audacity damage reduction. It stacks with gift of the Carrick, or whatever, the fragment of Mordred's crown. It stacks with that stuff. So please use that over the delving buff. It's way more consistent with value. Okay. I assume we're going to go for the kill here. Puddle. Getting somebody while they're tracking is actually super underrated. They will know you're there, but obviously they're toying with a target window, so you can really like mess them up. So let's try and figure out like what this burst is. So that's going to be pounce, eye gouge, claws. There's the claws right there. That's a big. So it looks like you got a critical hit with your pounce and or your eye gouge and or a dev. And then this is the claws right there. There's your howl, and here comes the maul. Bang, there's the chain from howl. And then here comes another claws. Claws. Wait, yeah, so that was a claws. And then here comes the next opener. I'm really curious what skill you use here. I'm guessing it's gonna be piercing claws. Piercing claws, eye gouge, claws, 1. Yeah, so you're covering your skill bar, but I know exactly what skills you're using. This is either piercing, I assume this is piercing claws. It really should be either rend, or it should be scratch and snip, which it might have been a scratch and snip, but I don't think it was. So your rotation is just the pounce, eye gouge, claws, I don't even care, howl, maul, claws, and then you did what I think is PC, eye gouge, claws. But this should have been rend, or it should have been swipe. Actually, swipe would have been better than piercing claws, most likely, given the target's HP and it looks like they're mid level. But I think S and S would have been even better. Definitely been even better. This is a target I probably would have used scratch and snip on, or rend. Okay. Nice kill. You think you're being sneaky, but okay, this is going to be fun. I don't know when this was taken, but obviously the champ ally buff, these champs are just absolutely awful to 1v1 right now. Again, with the lack of incoming damage food, really raises some questions. I'm not sure if you just had extra pots or whatever, but pounce, eye gouge, claws. What is going on? Okay, that felt really weird. Don't care about this. Claws. You're kiting. What was that all about? There's some sort of like elite strategy I'm not aware of. Going to a rend, please. Good. Back to a claws. And let's maul. And then do you see it again now? Do you see this? Why are we not eye gouge chaining this? You're gonna hit maul and then you're gonna go claws, eye gouge, and then probably rend. But that's not the correct play. Yeah, it's not the correct play. Stun pot. So I'm going to show you guys a really a little elite strategy in a second. Claws, eye gouge, swipe. Haha, look at you. Nice job. Back to claws, please. Then piercing claws. So you're wound potting now. I'm actually going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to give you a really big brain strat. It's very low return on investment, but if you just want something really cute that you can like min max out of. Claws. What happened there? Oh, you goofed it there. Yeah, I don't know why that eye gouge was used. I think you just messed up the chain because it got kited. Back to claws, please. Morale pot. That was really awkward. You want to try and have that key bound so where it's like easier to use. Claws, eye gouge, maul. Nice. Back to claws, please. You can also change the weird glowy pattern here. It's under UI options or something back to classic. There's like a little tab down menu that you can select through. I don't remember where, but you can do it. Because I hate this glow crap. Okay, here comes the hips. Oh, there's no hips. Oh, you're just gonna have to out damage him. Oh, okay. That was fine. Just there's a lot of times in your rotation where eye gouge is just sitting off of cooldown. And I also think your movement needs to be better. Rega elevated. I think this is Kovac or something. The old Cappy from back in the day. Pounce. Eye gouge. Claws. Howl. Maul. Nice. How did you deal with this stun turn? Oh, he's already turned towards you. Tragic. There's nothing more annoying than a target that knows you're going to jump. Okay, so he doesn't even CBR, so you're in a bit of a trouble. Now, I don't understand why you're kiting. So what I'm anticipating, what I'm thinking is you're kiting because you want him to blow all of his buffs, most importantly CBR, and you basically are thinking, okay, if I kite a little bit, I'll waste maybe 2 or 3 seconds of CBR damage time and come closer, survive a little longer so that I can get to that CC opportunity a few seconds in. In other words, like with champ, it's like if you can get the fight to last longer than 20 seconds, you have a significantly higher chance of winning. I mean, pre-update, I don't even know anymore, because you can actually CC again, right? I'm assuming that's what you're doing, because the problem is champs just have such stupid range, and if you kite, it also gives them time to go Controlled Fury, CBR, Champions Duel, Fight On, True Heroics. There's a lot of debuffs, buffs that they can put out and get themselves all set up and sorted, sprint, so that when we actually fight, he's like, okay, now I'm ready to fight. So I'm not sure if this strat is good or not. I would want to hear your reasoning for it. Okay, really important that you piercing claws now. My phone just came back on, it was dead. That's the noise. Rend here, please. So you're gonna slow, you really need to get a rend chain up here going. Yeah, so you're swiping, but you don't have rend up. I think at some point in time, your algorithm, like your normal rotational opener, got thrown for a loop. And it's not looking good right now. There's your morale pot. Again, it's really awkwardly placed. Yeah, you're clicking it. Yeah, not good. we need to address that problem. Looks like you're just pressing a bunch of skills. I think this is a disaster, honestly. So you mess up a bunch of your skills here, and then you go in for pounce, but he's immune, right? He's CBR, so doesn't do anything. I don't think you're playing this one very well at all. I think you wound pot there as well. I'll talk about the elite strategy in just a second. And you reapply your slow, even though you're not going to even get a chance to go for the pounce proc again. So it makes no sense to reapply the slow. He was already slowed. The reason you only got one of these here is because you consumed the cripple buff with pounce, but it didn't work because he was immune. So not great. One thing I will talk about really quick with the wound pot thing is it's totally fine to spam it. If you can reduce like 1 tick, 2 ticks, it's a little bit of payoff. But the most elite thing you can do is wound pot right as you CC them. In other words, so if I go for a tendon shred or a hips or a disappear, whatever pounds, if I wound pot right then, and then while he's stunned, it's cleared. Basically, you increase the amount of time that you're cleared, and then he has to get up, heal, turn around, whatever, and then he hits you again. There's like, it's like an extra second or two of basically that bleed not ticking. So you either want to use it when they're CC'd or when you're kiting. That's when you wound pot. Don't just mindlessly spam it. The only time you should mindlessly spam it's like if you're facing a warden or whatever, and then you just purge whatever you can as quickly as you can. Or like a hunter, for example. Although that one's a little trickier. Okay, captain. Captains are pretty nuts here. Thankfully, there's no pop buff or total defense, so this should be killable. There's the puddle. Pounce, eye gouge, claws. Oh, you scuffed up your opener. Pounce, unless you're going for a piercing claws. Nah, yeah, I see you scuffed it up. Yeah, you scuffed it up. So you basically chain 2 immediates back to back with no payout, nothing in between. That's okay. It happens, but it's obviously not great. I think what you're trying to do there is you were trying to go, oh, it's a captain, so I'm going to use piercing claws early rather than bestial claws. But I honestly think when you have positional like this and in puddle, prioritize claws quickly, and then you can go pounce, eye gouge, claws, howl, then maul. Claws again. I mean, I wouldn't change anything because even though you're like, oh, I want to get PC and cooldown as fast as I can, yeah, but you have positional claws available. Like I think I still prioritize the positional claws, and then as they turn around here, now you get that piercing claws off. Okay. The only other thing I'd say about captain as well, which I think you do here, is it is important to try and get that rend up early and or cripple, because they're going to pop fighting withdrawal, and then that if that gets parried, that's pretty brutal. Either cripple or rend. So get those up quick. Sometimes even worth like reducing your burst just to get cripple up before they turn around. There's your hunter. You need to wound pot that. Okay. Whenever there's a hunter situation like this, you need to get them on the back foot immediately. So what you should do against this takes a little bit of time to build, but you need to wound pot instantly, get rid of that DOT here. And then you need to stun pot, tendon shred, claws, eye gouge, maul, etc., whatever, rend, whatever. And then just get ready to pop like your brand as quickly as you can to stay on top of them. So I don't know if you have your rank brand, but like make sure that you're not slowed. But this could be really ugly because you're just rotating now, but you should be getting them on the back foot like immediately. There's no way you pull this one out. Flee, like what's going on here? This is not good. You need that stun. This is just really messy. And then you piercing claws. What? It's a 330 hunter without positioning, like with positional. Not great. Not going to win this fight. I don't really care. Okay, so this isn't Pietchu. Tronald is a good champ. This is again going to be pre-update. Claws. Oh, you choked it again. You need to work on this. That's 2 immediates. Bam, bam. And then the claws just didn't happen before. So you need more practice on this. Claws. There's your little kite. But again, he's just taking that time to duel to buff up. If you have your brand, if you have the combinations, please get a brand. If for just clearing champs duel alone, it's worth it. Maul, claws, back again. You need to get that rend up. Wouldn't bother slowing. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't even think cripple does anything to a sprinting champ. So especially considering he's got CBR right now, there's no point even getting the debuff up right now. Like I know you're like, oh, I got the bleed, but you could have gotten your rend up. You could have done another clause. Not a good use of skills. Okay. Good. There's your rend finally. Clause. Maul, eye gouge, clause. We're seeing it again. Do you see how you're not comfortable doing your reverse chains? You're only comfortable doing clause, eye gouge forward, and it needs to be also something X eye gouge clause backwards. In other words, you're comfortable doing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but you also need to be comfortable wrapping back this way too, right? And right now, like for example, you just use your maul and eye gouge was sitting right there, and you just let the entire maul duration go out. That's no good. Ooh, like I said, why are you re-rending? You have it's questionable rend. You had maul and piercing claws available. Okay, we missed the opener, probably because you crapped the bed with it. There's your sprint. Sprint's really important versus champions. Like, I honestly feel bad even giving you coaching versus champions. It looked like you were trying to swipe there again, even though Ren was available. Because they're just impossible to beat right now. Like I've beaten a couple of balanced abominations, but it took like a tome of defense, and honestly it's just because I'm so much better than they are. It's the only reason I'm getting the kills. Like there's just no way that like if you're even halfway decent at champ, you should lose to anything right now with gear. I mean literally any class. Again, Rend is still not up, so I'll give you some advice versus champ, but most of the time it's just like don't even bother. They're just ridiculously overpowered. There's nothing and no creep that can beat them 1v1 right now. Even if a champ loses to like a really mitted up, really well played spider, it's just because the champ is bad. Probably get that hips or 10-inch shred rolling. The advantage of hips is that you can get that knockdown and you're invulnerable. Holy smokes, you're not gonna get the kill, are you? This is just you being nice. But obviously the disadvantage of hips is that it doesn't do any damage. Like 10-inch shred does a lot of damage. Okay, so for you, there's gonna be like 2 rotational things. Number 1 is like worry about the reverse chains. So the reverse, like I'm seeing eye gouge sitting off of cooldown, and you're not using it. Just because you want to start with the claws eye gouge thing, which don't worry about that. You need to prioritize keeping eye gouge and claws on cooldown as much as you can. Morale pot needs to be keybound. I'm tired of seeing you kite around weirdly. And then just like the general etc. stuff, we'll kind of put it as like your buffs. I want to see incoming damage food if you can spend commendations. And I don't know what this other thing is. Maybe it's evade, maybe it's resist, but incoming damage food is better use of your commendations than the other stuff. But overall, not bad rotation at all. This is pretty solid work gameplay all the way through. I hope you find this helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video.